my relationship, drumming up relationships out of thin air don't equate to really strong relationships. It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes activity, encounters. It takes walking through some things. It takes seeing each other's character, personality. It takes seeing your level of consistency, that trust can be established. And then with trust comes the ability to be able to share things. And your demonstrated activity within that relationship puts you in a position for a certain level of confidence to be established for me to confide in you and share the things that are the secrets that I maintain to myself so that nobody else knows. But I have a trust that you'll keep that sealed and locked inside of a box, and it'll just be between you and I don't have to worry about you going to spread all of my business out here. And so as a result, you earn that trust over time. Well, if it takes that long for us to do it just as humans, just as mankind, how much longer is it going to take you to really understand who God is? Oh, but you won't even spend time in your word. Well, of course you don't understand who he is. And so because you don't understand, you know what you do? You start serving mammon more than you serve God. You find yourself just trying to take what the world tells you, because you know what? They are bombarding you. There's a feedback loop from the world that is constantly going. Right? You got it on your phone, you got it on your television, you got it on your radio, you got it in people, and the world it's all of this information coming at you, right? But the difference between the world and God is that you got to go seek God. The world is coming at you. And because the world is constantly coming at you and they're telling you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And you're not necessarily tuning into God. I mean, it ain't that people ain't saying stuff in the kingdom. But you ain't exactly tuning into that. It doesn't resonate, but everything seems to resonate in the world. And you look at where people are, the power of comparison. You look at where people are and where you're not. And so therefore, because they are there, maybe there is something that I can glean from them. And so therefore, I can hear them faster than I can hear this word that's ancient. That seems to be from way back in the day. And it says thus and thou and all this other stuff. And they talking about, seeds and plants and stuff. I ain't no farmer. I don't care about that stuff. And now you miss God because you're caught up with the world.
Before we can be a light for others, we have to be filled ourselves. And too often, we try to pour from an empty cup. Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." But the question is, what are we actually shining? Are we radiating God's presence? Or are we running on fumes, trying to help others while spiritually drained ourselves? A 2016 Pew Research study found that 82% of Americans rely on their own research when making major life decisions. Only 45% turn to prayer, and just 15% seek guidance from spiritual leaders. We're a culture that's leaning hard into self-reliance, and it shows. Even the number of people who pray daily has dropped 14% since 2007. So not only are we not asking God for help, many of us have stopped talking to him altogether. And while self-improvement has its place, it's become a substitute for seeking God. As one article puts it, when we're obsessed with changing what we don't like about ourselves, we start blurring the lines between God's plan and our own. We stop asking, God, who have you called me to be? And start asking, how can I look better, feel better, be more successful? So with all this in mind, the cultural shift towards self-reliance, the drop in prayer, the rise in performance-driven living, it makes you wonder, have we become so confident in our own ability to figure things out that we've forgotten how to fully depend on God? When I think about this question, I think about my younger self. When I became, I'm not going to say obsessed, but I went through a phase where I would just Google everything. If I had a question, if I had a wonder about something, Google. Like my mom started calling me Google Queen. Like I would Google everything to figure it out. And it is, now that I think about it, like obviously I should have turned to prayer, but at the time it felt like it's the most tangible thing that I could do to figure what I needed out at the time, at the moment. And now sometimes even I find myself falling down that path, but then I have to retract and like take a step back and really go to him and speak with him about what it is I need help with or I have questions about.
Well, I mean, you're talking about what your conditioned default behavior is going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a, a world where great value is placed on your intellectual prowess. And so our approach towards speaking to the issues that we're dealing with in life usually starts out on the path of applying some level of your own intellectual knowledge. And so when you lack it, then your natural inclination is to go find a source that may have that information that you need to navigate what it is that you're navigating. And then you find yourself in a technological age where information is at your fingertips, which is a little different than how it was, a few generations ago, where, to gain access to information, you either had to reach out to somebody who knew the information, or you had to go seek the information through a long process of research that required the investigation inside of books, right? And so that would either come by way of the library or if you were like many parents back in the day, they all invested into Encyclopedia Britannica. And so you had all of these encyclopedias in the house that you had to parse through to find information, but none of that's really dealing with life situations. And now with the advent of AI, you're going to have more and more people reaching out to AI to identify what the solution should be. So it's going to take them even further and further away from seeking God. And that self-reliance that you're referring to, you have to ask yourself, where does it all actually come from? Well, that paradigm is a conditioning that is handed down in the world. And you have to understand that there's probably an agenda behind that. If I was to, identify who our adversary is, being Satan, then it seems like the most perfect mechanism to condition your mind to be self-reliant. So you have people out there saying things like, I am a god. And you've got people out there, trying to prop themselves up and take the position, if you will, of God. And so when you've got all of that swirling around in the society that you live in, and there's so much of that promotion of self, that you almost feel inadequate if you can't somehow figure, your situation out. And so therefore, rather than trust and lean on, you're going to appeal to, the resources where you may find an answer quickly. Because prayer, when you pray, the answer doesn't often come as quick as you desire. And the whole invention of prayer is centered around faith, right? You have to believe that when you go to pray that, one, your prayers will be heard, and then two, that there will be a response to it. And so historically, right, if you pray and you're on the journey, and that's truly a matter of whether or not you're actually on the journey, when you pray with the intent and the hope that an answer will come, while understanding that the answer may not come immediately. Well, a lot of people are looking for immediate answers. And somehow in the minds of those who, whether they're followers, non-followers, the getting to the answer part is not something that they're conditioned to wait for. in many respects, in our current society, we're conditioned to get something immediately.
Yeah.
And that's why they call us a microwave generation, because everything has to come at the speed of light. And so that doesn't lend to a faith journey. That doesn't lend to a faith walk where patience is required, time is required, right? When you take all of those factors into account, it is only natural to think that is going to be most people's reflex, is to go to the resources that they know are readily available, that if nothing else, they can get a quick answer. It doesn't even matter if it's the right answer. And God forbid you read your word, and God forbid you start to, God forbid you wait on an answer. And certainly, I thought it was interesting in your opening statement, the lack of pursuit of individuals to seek out spiritual leaders. And the reason why I find that one interesting is because there's a few dynamics there that, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it. There's a question of access, right? Some spiritual leaders, quote unquote, are so removed from the populace that, you can't get to them. You don't have access. And so therefore you cannot, hey, what do you think? And it really speaks to the lack of discipleship, mentorship. I mean, this is a common theme that we seem to come back to when talking about these situations, because there isn't kind of that immediate access to someone who's, a little bit wiser, a little bit further along in their walk to be able to appeal to. And even in that, there's still the same trust factors that are not necessarily extended to individuals or even to God, right? Which then begs the question, what journey are you on? What do you really believe? Because the more self-reliance or self-reliant we become, it doesn't necessarily have to take you away from God, but you start to have faith in your own security. So there's the story of the rich man that approaches Jesus, and as the story goes, he says, Lord, what is it that I should do? I have everything that I have need of. And Jesus says, sell everything you have and come follow me. Well, that's hard, because the man was very wealthy. And what it really speaks to is that in many respects, our security is in the things that we have. Our security is in the resources or possessions that we own, and not necessarily in God. Our way out, if you will, is baked into those who we know or the stuff that we have. We use those things as our security blanket to get us out of situations. And as a result, we hinder our growth in the faith, right? We can't become stronger in the faith. We can't become fully reliant on God because we have too many alternatives. And then our alternatives kind of become our savior. And you can go through your entire life living that way. And so we never test God, so we never get to see how he delivers. And as a result, we do take many things upon ourselves to try to execute, instead of being in position to just walk through the doors that God, has to open for us. And that's unfortunate, because at some point that self-reliance will fail. At some point, those friendships will fail. At some point, your resource will fail. And the saddest part about it is if we have countless accounts of events taking place in both recent history and, more distant history that would suggest that our faith in our security in those various different things is not something that's reliable. It's not something that we can depend on. When 9/11 happened, whatever security that you had, and as far as the protection that you believe you're under within the United States. Yes, we have the world's largest army. Yes, we have the biggest footprint in the earth with our alliances and our bases all across the world. But we as individuals, if somebody wants to attack us, we are still vulnerable. Maybe not from a holistic country, falling standpoint, but we are certainly vulnerable to attack. And so, I'm of age, obviously, full adult age during that time with children and things of that nature. And the nature in which when that event took place, it's always interesting. It's like the cycles that are accounted for in the Bible, they have not ended even unto this day, because the first thing that people did after 9/11 is everybody circled around and everybody started praying and everybody started showing up in the churches, and the churches swelled during that time in the days and weeks that followed 9/11 and leading up to the time where, there's a declaration of war and moving into. So you have all of these things that take place, and eventually we went away from, praying and going back to the churches eventually, because it wasn't a built-in habit, right? It was just a reaction to. Now it's funny that was everyone's reaction. A large populace of the United States, that was their reaction. And I mean, it'd be one thing if it was only in New York. No, this was like all across the United States. We had the National Day of Prayer. We had, and here's the thing.
What?
Yeah. Oh,
I've never even heard of that.
You've never heard of that?
No.
Oh my God. We had, oh man, you're gonna have to look this up. We had National Day of Prayer, a moment of silence. And we were going to churches all across the U.S., right? For a moment of silence. And this was on the anniversary of 9/11 and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was like a deal. And now it's funny you say that, because here we are 24 years removed from that moment. And yeah, you're right. In your generation, you're not even familiar with that. As a matter of fact, you might have been one when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
So you really don't even understand necessarily the impact, because by the time you turned 10, I'm not even so sure that they were still observing the holiday the way that they did when it first took place in the years following. But I didn't bring that to really dwell on the actual event itself as much as people's response and reaction in the midst of the event. And I think somewhere inherently inside of us, we know what we're supposed to do. We know where our help comes from. My help cometh from the Lord. That's to all my old saints out there. But it's not our default response, right? In the midst of the day-to-day, that's not the first place we go. It's in the midst of great devastation that we know where to go. And that cycle is no different than the 6 cycles that the children of Israel would go throughout the course of the Old Testament. And it's been that way all the way through the ages. When you look at all of the foreign kings and stuff of that nature mentioned of in the Old Testament of the Bible, and when, there was always at least, if you look at the books of Daniel, and honestly, if you go throughout, there's always the prophets of God who have been in the earth that have kind of been were the voice of God in the earth. And when great calamity would come, it's when people get real about their vulnerability, right? Their humanity. And it's sad that we have to wait till we find ourselves in extreme situations to find God again, but it is somewhat the default response for people is to not seek God, but to seek really what we could minimize that to is and reduce it down to is seek man, seek help from man. And that kind of speaks to what I talked about before in a previous episode about Jesus said, I came not, in my own name, I came in my Father's name, but you rather accept somebody who comes in their own name. And so that's who we seek out. The ones who project that they know. And what unfortunately we will find, it's, that's great for theater. It's great to stand on the stage and to speak on topics that you're well versed in that don't throw you any curveballs. It's a whole nother thing to be in the midst of say your audience that can pose whatever question that they may and having to respond to that. So there's some things that are scripted and rehearsed to death, and then there are other things that require knowledge right now. And more often than not, there are way too many folks that don't have the knowledge for certain things right now. They don't have the answer. And so I find that somewhat interesting that we oftentimes will lean to man for those answers, given the track record that basically lays out the fact that many of us don't have all of the necessary answers that you need. But nonetheless, that is our tendency. That is our natural inclination, which is to turn to man instead of God until things get bad enough. And there's nothing that you can do or I can do. And there's only one source who can get it done if there's any hope for it to be done. And then that's when people turn to prayer. And it should be the first thing that we turn to because it's the most easily accessible tool that we have as believers is to pray first.
I feel like we have gotten to a place also where it's almost a sign of weakness to ask for help from, and like you were saying, the access to spiritual leaders, and like sometimes it's just like the spiritual leader who doesn't allow that access, but sometimes even like you don't ask for help, and like it might be there, but you'll never know if you don't ask. And I just want to know, what do you think, like where the shift happened? Like why has it become such a sign of weakness when asking for help?
Well, I think, it almost piggybacks off of our last topic, which was help wanted. Because I believe in the final segment, we talked somewhat about this fear. And that fear has been conditioned in us because of our engagement with society. Society wants you to feel like, I want to say that what has been projected over the last few decades, I've watched it kind of transition. I'm just old enough to have been around just long enough to see kind of the transition of what we will call media, right? So now we got social media, but you got television media and major networks and stuff. And contrary to popular belief and what you may think is real and what's not real, there are more paid actors than there are, more legitimate journalists or people who are being genuine on social media. So there's a lot of fake news out there per se, because there are people that pull strings. And I'm just old enough to be before the time where TV was majorly commercialized, right? Like you had multiple channels, so many channels. I come from a time where there was only like 3 channels that you had, right? And so, shoot, some folks, I'm sure, plenty of folks are still around that came before that time. Yeah. Right? A time where, you got your entertainment through radio. Like I don't go back that far, but I know people that go back that far, right? So the and I said your entertainment, but let me make sure I'm specific in saying your news.
Yeah.
Right? Where your news used to come from radio, and then it started to come from television, and then television expanded, right? So did radio, but television expanded to the extent that now you're talking about it went beyond just television to, with the advent of internet, and now it comes directly to your screen. And it's at no in particular time of programming, per se, right? And so that evolution of exposure, and if you have been exposed and then have consumed all these different things, you've got so much stuff telling you to be something that is not even realistic, right? With every hero that's in a movie that somehow gets shot 18 times but never seems to die, or a million bad guys is coming after them, and then they never seem to get hit. They always, and then the unrealistic expectation of wives on their husbands because they want them to live up to that, or husbands on their wives because they want them to live up to the sex objects that get portrayed on the screen. And so as a result, what you end up with is a lot of unrealistic expectations that are subconsciously set in the minds of individuals who are exposed to all this. And then it's reinforced by their peers, right? And then you go through life and nobody's really showing their true colors, per se. Nobody's really showing the mess that's back at home, right? And so as a result, you could, if you're not fully engaged with everyone, you might assume that everybody else is doing fine and you're the only person that's struggling. When nobody wants to look like the village, you got the rest of that saying. And so as a result, then you suffer in silence. Yeah. And now we've come into a generation of this widespread acknowledgement of mental health deficits. But then even that gets to some extent it's been popularized, and now it becomes a mix of people with genuine mental health issues versus those who are just want attention. Yeah. And how do you distinguish between the two, right? How do you distinguish between somebody who's actually dealing with mental trauma versus somebody who's just seeking attention? And then you have to address all of them somewhat the same. And so the people that really need the care, it's offset by the people who, are just, again, want attention. But at least we are somewhat conscientious, if you will, about mental health issues. And now there's mental health awareness. But in the midst of all of that, in the midst of all of the John Wayne movies that came, back in the day, Clark Gables and all of these other, very masculine men that, seem to have it all together. James Bond figured out, and I'm using action heroes because that's literally what every now kid is being fed, that this is what it looks like. And it's what they chase after. Same thing with young ladies who chase after these models and, the kind of the image that's portrayed that they're now trying to live up to. When you have all of that take place, over the course of our history, and we'll say our recent history, it's only natural that you're going to be conditioned to be silent. Yeah. I mean, we're just now breaking into a period where people are starting to realize, I need help, right? But even still, they're not seeking God. They're seeking governmental resources to get their help. right? And in many respects, the spiritual leaders are not qualified to answer or speak to a lot of the situations. I mean, that's why we have clinicians. But every time you look up, there's a new diagnosis that hits the books that gets added to the list of things to deal with, and it somewhat is chaotic. And I understand who the author of confusion is, which lets me know that much of this is just nothing more than the work of our adversary. So the question then becomes, how do you combat it? How do you deal with this reality that we're being conditioned to think a certain way?
Yeah.
And the start, if you will, to empowerment in the faith is to actually exercise your faith. And that's hard, because what comes along with that is something that is not inherent in you to do, which is to wait.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, can you be still and wait on God? Most people can't. They don't. That's what trust is, right? You know, believing that somebody's going to show up the way that they said they were going to show up. That wait, that trust, that unwavering trust that I'm not going to try to make this happen myself. I'm just going to wait on you, Lord. Takes time to work yourself up to that. We all have a measure of faith. Our faith is not full. And because we have a measure of faith, the degree to which we can exercise faith in our various different situations, whether self-inflicted or whether we find ourselves just in them by no cause of our own, there's just this reality that many of us will fail that test. And if it's not impressed upon us to endure when those moments come, we'll make irrational judgments, decisions, and we will jump the gun and delaying our ultimate, reward, if you will, that lies on the other end. Yeah. So it's a tough situation, and there's no easy answer, or not so much no easy answer. There's no easy way out of it. It's kind of like anything else. You got to pay your dues. You got to learn to tow that rope. And if you don't, then you never will truly witness or come to the realization of what all God could be in your life, because you never gave him a chance. You couldn't make it past a certain point in your faith journey. So,
yeah, that actually goes right into our next question, which is, I don't know, this is kind of it's pretty I'd say it's complex. It's different. If God didn't give us what we asked for, would our faith still stand?
So that's a question. That's like a James chapter 4 question, right? Why are you asking for it? Right? Is it because you need it or because you want it?
Yeah.
Right? God knows what you have need of, right?
Yeah.
So if he knows what you have need of and you voice what you have need of, then do you trust him to deliver it? Right? And I mean, I'm gonna try to unpack this a little bit, but if you trust that he will deliver it, so then have you now just defaulted to seeking the kingdom, or do you spend your time dwelling on waiting on the need? I'm gonna try to use a like situation. When you're young and you don't want to be somewhere, you can find yourself looking at the clock. And it seems like the time will never come.
Yeah.
And the reason the time will never come is because you're too focused on the clock instead of focused on some other things that if you did those other things, you wouldn't notice that the time, has flown by. And as a result, your time is up. Sometimes when you're so focused on what it is that you want, you miss out on, all that you could be doing in the midst of that time. And I think when I reference James 4, because James 4 talks about where the wars come from. Come they not from thine own members. You have not because you ask not. You ask, but you ask amiss that you may consume it upon your own lust. The issues that we experience in our life come from the own issues that we have going on inside of us. It's not usually external. You say when you're exercising your faith in something that you ask for, right? And then it doesn't come, right? Well, what were you asking for? Some folks we're humans, man. We ask for goofy stuff from God. It's usually material oriented, right? Some things we may pray for and ask for, but that are outside of our control because there's just this reality, like you may pray for human beings, right? But some of those things are outside of your control. But you know what? There are things with God, there's nothing that is impossible. We understand that, right? Yeah. But there's a human element to some of the things that we ask for. If you're praying for somebody else, right? That a way be made for them, then the also in the book of James, it says the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And there's this element to it that if I looked at chapter 4, where it talks about the fact that I have not because I ask not, but then I ask. When I ask that I may consume something upon my own lust. It's like I'm asking for my own greedy desire, not because I need something. Because if it's something you want, God has given you the power to go get wealth. Yeah, He's given you the power to go get anything that you need inside of the earth. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof and everything that dwells within it, right? And therefore, because his hand, he reigns on high and he is king of both heaven and the owner of this world, there is a ruler that is in this world who we know is to be Satan, but there is nothing that Satan rules over that God doesn't own. So what's withheld from you? So if there's something that you want, right? Go get it, but go get it by the legal means. You don't have to go, do illegal acts in order to acquire what it is that you desire. But then there's this other element, right? Where, is it a need? Most of the stuff that we may find ourselves praying for, we don't really isolate and delineate whether or not it's a need or a want. You may, in your head, I need my light bill to be paid. But you may need your lights to get turned off so that you don't spend your money on a Happy Meal instead of, okay, I'm sorry, that may be going a little far. You may not be buying a Happy Meal. Maybe it's a Junior Whopper meal, or maybe it's, what are you spending your money on? All right. So maybe I don't make that much money, and as a result, I got hardships, right? But maybe I got too much pride to go down to public aid office and ask for assistance, because there's all of these various different things that we find ourselves in these various situations, and so many of us are looking for a bailout, and that's not the way of the kingdom. If your appeal to God is looking for a bailout, God will make a way for you. And he's an on-time God, but bailing you out of self-inflicted issues that really they're not life and death, right? They're not the end of the world type situations, right? And Some people are praying for them to be saved from themselves. And that's where a lot of the prayer. And maybe it's not so effective.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a demonstration maybe of your lack of faith. Because maybe you're not taking your cue on your decisions from God. You're just making decisions of yourself, which is why you find yourself in the situations that you're in. And so maybe, just maybe, the reason why your prayers aren't being answered is either one, because they don't align with the will, purpose, and plan of God. B, you don't align with the will, purpose, and plan of God. And C, it's not a need. God knows what you have need of. And when we understand that God knows what we have need of, Paul puts it this way: except for food, shelter, and clothing, if you have these things, you need to be content.
Yeah.
I desire that you be content, because for everything else, the love of money is the root of all evil. And it'll take you away from God. So you got to first learn to be content in what it is that you have, if you have those three things, because understand, as far as needs go, there are a lot of people in the world that don't have those three things. Food security, housing security, right? Clothing. I mean, there are people in countries that don't have shoes.
Yeah.
They walk around barefoot, not because they want to, but because the nature of where they live doesn't afford them the ability to have on sneakers and dress shoes, right? And if you have those three things, you're rich. You're rich. By world standards, you're pretty well off. So what then are you asking for, right? And it's not that you can't pray to God for the things that you desire in your heart. He knows what you desire, but seek him first, right? Don't just call on him when you want something.
Yeah.
And when we think about it from a relationship standpoint, there's a lot of unfair requests that we make of man, right? Those people who may be in our lives. And so what sense does it make? How would you think that your father would respond or your mother would respond if the only time that they heard from you, talked to you, was when you needed something? How would you feel if the only time a person called you, reached out to you, was desiring to spend time with you, was because they wanted something from you, right? And that suggests that their love towards you is not necessarily genuine, because they only show up and they're only nice, or they only are cordial, or they're only, inquisitive about how you're doing and things of that nature when they need something, which means that they're trying to manipulate you to get what they want. And as a result, that's not living up to what we would consider to be a genuine relationship, which means that the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man, righteous meaning having faith, meaning that I'm in right relationship with God, availeth much. That means that if your relationship is not where it needs to be with God, don't have the expectation that somehow he's going to speak or answer to your desires or requests for the things that you want.